Talking Star Wars presents Talking Avatar.
Hello, Star Wars fans and Avatar fans.
I'm Connor,
And I am Alex.
and this is another installment of our mini season focusing on Avatar The Last Airbender and the Legend of Korra. Uh, in a bit, we'll be returning to our regular Star Wars content, but for now, we're going to take a look at one of the main features of the Avatar world, uh, tied somewhat, I would say, to Star Wars, and that would be that of spirituality and the spiritual world.
Yeah, so this episode in the Avatar universe talks about the spirit world, how it is depicted, the spirits that we see, just the presence that spirits have in the world, sort of like this semi divine, semi malicious sort of parallel world that exists alongside all of our characters in Avatar. Sort of this mystical element where things are not easily explained by science or by empirical analysis.
And that almost sounds like the Force from Star Wars, but it's not. Yes, the Force is this mysterious other realm outside of our reality where energies can be manipulated and connected. I will say one major difference is that in Star Wars, characters draw their power from the Force, where, yes, there is a spiritual connection between bending and the spiritual realm, but it's much more subtle. Someone who is born bending, who lives their life as a bender, could not have a spiritual moment in their life, not knowing that their power originated from a very spiritual means, but that they don't have the same sort of uh, connection to it like a Jedi or Sith would.
Yeah, so the spirit world is portrayed not only as this energy force, but it's another world. It is a strange, otherworldly, hard to comprehend plane of existence that exists separate from the world that humans currently reside in. And as we learn in Korra, it is a deliberate, also geographical separation, in that they are in separate worlds, and there are even portals to travel between them, which are eventually opened, three of them. Uh, but to start with, when we get to um, Aang and seeing his interactions with the spirit world, it is a hard place to get to. And communicating spiritually and using spiritual energy is difficult. One, I believe this is because the world is not very spiritual at the time. Aang is also a young avatar, and a world at war is not a great time to try to be spiritually aligned. So even though Aang himself is a powerful airbender, he has trouble connecting with his past lives, which is portrayed as being much easier for both a fully realized avatar and in a world that is a little bit less out of balance.
And it's something where, yeah, I mean, we have characters in Star Wars pass objects through the Force. We have them interact with old dead teachers, but that's kind of where the extent of the Force as a physical realm goes. In Avatar, it's something that once Aang enters, looks very much like the real world, but it's inhabited by a myriad of different creatures.
Yeah,
And
so we see multiple takes on the spirit world. So there sort of seems to be this sort of in between place where your spirit is in the spirit world, but you are otherwise inhabiting the same geoterminus space in the real world. We see this when Aang is a blue spirit. They're sort of wandering around. Um,
his granddaughter Janora does this as well.
yeah, she's able to
He's
spirit.
spying.
So able to detach your spirit. It's almost like his spirit is detached from his body,
Mhm.
but has not yet journeyed completely into the spirit world. So when Aang says, "Oh, I'm in the spirit world," when noticing that his hand is translucent, he has not yet journeyed into the spirit world proper, but his spirit has been detached from his body. As we see in other Star Wars media, Korra, the journey to into the spirit world fully in the North Pole, and later on in other areas. The actual spirit world is a place ruled by emotion, cognition, and the powerful spirits that dwell there.
Mhm.
This reminds me of places such as the Fade from Dragon Age, from sort of this world of twisting visions, the Dark Cave in Dagobah, where what you bring
Mhm.
with you is made manifest, and sometimes in very dangerous ways. So the spirit world is depicted as dangerous, as poorly understood, and is unable to be controlled. Even and throughout any of the series and any of the media, the spirit world is never a safe place,
Mhm.
even if there are safe places within it.
Yeah, there's this sort of uh, two-sided balance of the spiritual world, and we're not really introduced to the meaning of that until the Legend of Korra. But there's this nature of the spiritual realm where things have their true nature and they have a more aggressive form. When we see the giant panda beast, uh,
Heibai, the black and white spirit.
yes, he does not look like a giant panda. He looks like a giant black and white monster who is terrorizing a village. Only for us to learn that when he is more resolved in terms of his life's journey, he is just a big old panda who has been tormented into something more grotesque.
Yeah, so we see again, and he is a spirit that is able to manifest in the physical world and do great damage. And this is an ongoing plot point for avatars. Avatar Kuruk devoted most of his life. Spoilers for the Kyoshi novels, for anyone who hasn't read it. Avatar Kuruk devoted most of his life to fighting spirits that were attempting to in, force their way into the physical world to do harm, driven mad by either destruction of their environment or just because they were malicious spirits themselves. So Kuruk devoted his life to fighting off these dark spirits, but he only incited a cycle of violence that continued to cause more spirits to arise, though many of them arose out of decisions that his predecessor Yang Chen made when she forced impossible bargains on spirits that then fell apart, resulting in these dark, vengeful spirits that Kuruk had to deal with, resulting in his early death, resulting in a Kyoshi who did not have any of the benefits of a avatar education before she was forced to assume her mantle. All of that said, spirits themselves are portrayed in several different ways. There are some more generic spirits that are just like, hey, that's a cool spirit. And there are, or, oh, that's a dangerous spirit. But there are many, especially the more powerful ones, that have personalities, names, roles.
Mhm. It's implied that they all have a distinctive personality, but it's not like we spend a whole lot of time sitting and discussing that with them. If we take a look at the tale of Avatar Wan in the Legend of Korra, we see just a flock of different kind of spiritual creatures, each of which have a very visual personality. And I'm sure that if you went up and spoke to a spirit, they would have something interesting to say, but the audience doesn't necessarily hear every sort of sprite voice that is spoken in the spirit world.
Yeah, but we do get plenty of dangerous named spirits across
Mhm.
various Avatar media. One of the first one, we have Heibai, the black and white spirit, who is eventually mollified when his concerns are acknowledged, and it's like, yes, his force will be regrown, but his twisting into a dark shape is sort of a prologue to the dark spirits that end up under Unalaq's control.
Mhm.
Well, it's almost, and again, reminds me of another franchise, Dragon Age, where a spirit can be twisted into a demon based on the emotions of those around it
Mhm.
and people's expectations of meeting it. So when great harm is done to its forest, Heibai, the peaceful black and white spirit, becomes the rampaging monster.
Mhm.
But we get lots of other spirits that are more enigmatic. They're not always direct representations of a specific area, but instead have other purposes. We
Mhm.
have famously Koh the Face-Stealer, who once stole the face of the love of one of the avatars, who can steal your face if you show any emotion. And he is this eldritch abomination of like a constantly shifting face, part scorpion, part spider, part centipede.
And we don't really know why he is, and the motivations behind his decisions, but he is just a force of nature. He is this malevolent spiritual force that, like any kind of fantasy, I kind of treat it akin to Lord of the Rings, where looking into the backstory, you have all of these fantastical creatures, your wargs, your worms, your dragons. They all have a different sort of spiritual origin and background. Uh, it's just so diverse, and that's what we have in the spiritual world. So we have a creature who steals faces, and that's just his purpose and his role in society.
Yeah, it's not portrayed as necessarily good or evil, just as ancient and powerful and dangerous. You can treat with him, and he will be straight with you. But if you don't follow his rules, esoteric as they might be, uh, you will have to pay the consequences. It's almost like this spirited away area where there's just these strange spirit rules you have to abide by.
Mm-hmm.
We see other interesting named spirits. We have Wan Shi Tong, the great owl, he who knows 10,000 things in his great library.
Also has two forms, between one very erudite, mannered owl to a long, extended neck feral attack version. Very
Which is
frightening.
not uncommon for spirits. That is,
Mm-hmm.
he remains in control of himself, unlike Heibai, but I think this is a sign of how ancient and powerful Wan Shi Tong is. Though fighting is not his forte. I mean, and Wan Shi Tong is disaffected enough by mortals that he sides with Vaatu, attempting to destroy the human world and have it remade so that spirits can have a more prominent position in the next iteration.
Mm-hmm.
So, Wan Shi Tong is not on our happy spirit list.
Yes.
But then we meet other named spirits as well. We have something as simple as Boomju, a little sprite that becomes friends with Boomy, and both gives Boomy some spiritual insight and a friend to react to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, in other media, we have the Mother of Faces, Koh the Face-Stealer's mother, who can gift people new faces instead of taking their faces away.
Mm-hmm.
Another powerful spirit. What other named spirits come to your mind, Connor, before I dig into my backlog?
I know that the Fire Nation dragons aren't necessarily spirits, but they are spiritual in nature. That's why there are so many left. But they're
No, but
creatures that,
those are original benders,
yeah.
and those are creatures of the world, along
Mhm.
with the badger moles and the sky bison. So other spirits that come to mind for me, there is General Old Iron, who appears in the Rift comic, who is literally a giant spirit that wears iron armor that wants to destroy a town after its pristine wilderness is disrupted after, and he made an agreement with Yang Chen to ensure that the shoreline remained um, clean and unpolluted until industrialization took over, and that didn't go very well. And then we have another terrifying spirit, sort of in the vein of Koh the Face-Stealer, one of my favorite spirits that shows up in the Kyoshi novels, Father Glowworm,
Mm.
who has the unique ability to chew and burrow his way between the barrier between the spirit world and the normal world. He's this ancient, malevolent being that looks like a giant eye, and eventually is taken over and inhabited or is inhabited by one of our other characters, showing that it is not just Raava and Vaatu that can inhabit a human body. Other spirits that are powerful and ancient enough can do the same thing, though without harmonic convergence, it does not appear that this becomes like a reincarnation cycle. But for the character of the Kyoshi novel gets inhabited by Father Glowworm or takes control of Father Glowworm's power. It's unclear, but
Mhm.
it's a horrifying instance of what happens, and Father Glowworm himself is a horrifying entity.
Gross.
I mean, we meet him; he drinks the blood of two children to determine which one is the Avatar. So,
Ew. It reminds me of that one '90s toy that was just like a stuffed worm with a plastic head that used to glow. I think they called them glowworms. And then I'm thinking of that drinking the blood of children, and it's all just making very nasty visuals in my mind's eye.
and then there's these Phoenix spirits in the Yang Chen novels, where they're super vengeful, and Yang Chen makes a deal with them where they're just killing all the children of a village in punishment for a spiritual offense. And Yang Chen has to keep negotiating new deals because this village will not keep to the original deal.
Hmm.
So then, at some point, the Phoenixes are just like, you know what? They're all dead. Gonna kill little, and Yang Chen has to intervene again. So the spirits are not safe. They are distrusted by the general population. They can be capricious. They live a long time. But there are also spirits that are venerated. So we see of Tui and La, the ocean and the moon spirits, that are venerated by the water tribes, to the fact that they have a physical incarnation at the oasis at the North Pole.
Do we have any other reflection like that where we do have I mean, we have the Avatar, which is the physical reflection of the spiritual world, but
Of Raava, the spirit of light and life.
but do we have any other physical manifestation of a spirit?
Talked about Heibai, we talked about Wan Shi Tong, Father Glowworm. We see the Painted Lady appear once to Katara. The lion turtle just shows up, presumably out of the spirit world, to counsel
Yeah.
Aang.
That's where I was thinking the dragons. It's kind of in this nebulous space where, yes, they are animals, but at the same time they are spiritual beings, rare. They their origins are unknown. Um, but I guess outside of the realm of the named figures, we have the original two spirits, which would be Raava and
Yeah.
Vaatu. It's a yin and
Yeah,
yang, good and bad.
creation and destruction.
Mhm.
Neither can exist without the other, but um, if one destroys the other will be reborn.
Rava seems to be the natural state of things. It seems to be, uh,
Well, yeah, Rava is
mhm.
creation and Vatu is entropy.
And
But they have
yeah,
personalities now.
we could have a creature, a spiritual creature who is under the influence of Vatu, who loses their agency, loses their individual personality. They could have been a cheerful lemur before, or a ai, but then after the fact they become a servant. So Rava doesn't really take possession of a spiritual creature. A spiritual creature just has their own agency and personality. It's Vatu who seems to want to put his influence over other living spiritual beings, and then it's up to Rava to couple with a human in order to balance that out. So it's like Vaatu possessing and destroying, being battled by Rava, who's empowering and possessing.
Yeah, and it does take the combined efforts of both Wan and Rava to defeat Vatu during the previous harmonic convergence. But to consider, yeah, we don't ever see Vatu giving up his autonomy. Like Rava doesn't ever directly speak or take control of the Avatar's actions. She just lends her power. Someone enters the Avatar state, is able to call upon the power of the world spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Vatu kind of puppets Unalak by the end, and it's just Unalak is just the vessel by which
Mm-hmm.
Vatu takes over.
Which, let me get on my little soapbox. So if we have, you know, Rava has a mirror image of Vaatu. Whatever happens to Rava has the sort of inverse effect on Vaatu. When Vaatu is in power and grows, Rava shrinks. So Rava becomes a good avatar for eons, all throughout the universe of this story. We have Rava cycling through humans within the four elements. At this point, they really should have had a Dark Avatar start with Unalak and Vaatu. Have it go in reverse order so that the next Dark Avatar is an airbender somewhere. If there's such an importance behind that good versus evil balance, why don't we have a Dark Avatar?
Well, I'm going to refer you to what people say. It's like the balance in Star Wars means there should be two Jedi and two Sith. I'm like, no, balancing means everything isn't dying all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, the light side is the balance. Like, evil is corrosive and destructive. So, Vatu represents, he's always there. Entropy always exists. There's always the potential, but it is the job of everyone else to vanquish that, to achieve
Sure.
balance. It is not balance between, it's not like the evil viewpoint is just as valid as the good viewpoint that some people would have. It's like we have to respect the Sith just as much as we respect the Jedi. It's like, nah, the Jedi would like help you if your car broke down.
Mm-hmm.
The Sith would shoot you and steal your beater. So,
But I would say if just for the purpose of narrative interest, if Darth Vader is the servant of the dark side, Luke Skywalker is the servant of the light side, and they battle one another for control over supremacy. Uh,
well, that is because the conflict of the Avatar is not against. They already are a spiritual guide, and when spiritual items come up, they are the bridge.
mm-hmm.
By having a dark Avatar, it would just, I think, it would derail the thematic thrust in that what what Korra is always fighting against is the evolution of society and how it's changing and the challenges that arise in the world. Less so than, oh, there's another big enemy I have to fight. I have this nemesis.
Well, it's stupid of them to bring up the spirits in general, then, and to have someone be the vessel of Vaatu without making it meaningful, other than him transforming into a giant kaiju. He should have bent fire and earth and air.
Yeah. But to go on to our general spirit topic, we see a lot of interactions with the spirit world, actually. I mean, we see the moon spirit is killed by Zhao. Like, it takes the risk of physically going over into the real world to empower and protect earth or waterbenders, and in return is killed by Zhao, forcing Yue to then step into the role as physical avatar of the moon spirit in the world.
So we have kind of a reversal where instead of someone spiritual or something spiritual taking possession of a human, we have a human who's taking the form and elevating themselves to the status of spirit god.
And we see that there's general reverence and fear of spirits. Like, we even have Amon at first claiming that he received his ability to remove people's bending from the spirits, and people believe it. Korra, who has an avatar's education, knows that that shouldn't be possible, but everyone else is sort of like, oh yeah, spirits sounds like they could do that,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So, and then we get into how spirits are depicted in Korra, in that we lose a lot of the great named ones.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Koh the Face-Stealer. Instead, we get these like nameless dark spirits, but it's sort of like the same way as Heibai, where they've been corrupted by Vaatu, and so rather
Mm-hmm.
than getting like cool, unique appearances and things, they're sort of these generic dark silhouettes and dark spirits.
But even after that fact, once we have these spiritual portals open, where we have the spirit world interfering with the real world, in seasons 3 and 4 of Korra, we don't have a lot of spirits with personality. The Boonju doesn't talk; it's a little sprite. It floats. With that's if there's any missed opportunity of the Avatar franchise, it would be at this point.
Yeah,
Where,
I mean,
yeah,
Korra has made the unilateral decision to open the portals between two worlds, and we know that there are ancient,
mm-hmm.
powerful, intelligent spirits that can talk in the spirit world. What are their take on now a portal being permanently opened between their world and the non-spirit world?
And we don't learn that. We have human political conflict and spiritual conflict taking the focus of seasons 3 and 4, which I think are fantastic. I love Zakir, I love Kavira, I love seeing their uh, motivations and how they're shaped by their world. But
Yeah.
still, we have this opportunity to explore this spiritual realm, this whole entire other world, the you know the Fae, the world of the fairy. What does that look like in Avatar? How has it grown in the 70 years since we saw glimpses of it with Koh the Face-Stealer?
Yeah, and I mean there are practical impacts too. I mean, literally, there's three spirit portals now equidistant. That it's like a fast travel system in the real world, which is why there's a whole plot point in one of the Korra comics where President Reika wants to seize control of the spirit portal for economic reasons, because human history always comes down to money, Connor. It's all about the dinero.
So I think we just landed on it. So we've been talking just because this is our third episode of this particular recording session. The next series is going to be focusing on instead of like a high-speed rail system, it's going to be these huge metropolitan areas around the portals, and that's where all commerce is because that's where all the trading and consumption goes.
That is entirely possible that we could get a super metropolis spread across the real world and the spirit world. That I will grant you.
It's much better than spiritual email, which I was trying to pitch.
It's just, yes, let's send some telegraph lines to the spirit portals, which will still happen. But,
Yes.
yeah, so the going on with our
Yeah.
spirit talk, though, we also see there are certain individuals that are more attuned to the spirit world
Mhm.
than others. Obviously, there's the Avatar. The Avatar, at certain key moments, such as equinoxes and solstices, is able to commune with their past lives more easily and is able to speak with them as if they were people,
Mhm.
still living people, rather, and is able to travel into the spirit world for a period of time.
Mhm.
The more powerful the avatar, the more readily that can happen. For example, Avatar Yang Chen had the sometimes crippling ability to speak with any of her past lives at any time. But all of their thoughts and emotions were jumbled together because for her, she could not keep their personality straight because she had such a powerful connection to all her past lives. Whereas Aang required the equinox and solstices to connect with Roku. In fact, every time there is one in the show, something spiritual happens. And then Korra, it only matters for the first two seasons when she talks to Aang and the other past avatars. Before that, harmonic convergence starts the avatar cycle anew after the Avatar connection is temporarily broken by Vaatu.
Mm-hmm.
But the Avatar is not the only person that is able to journey into the spirit world and has a spiritual connection. We know that Iroh, in searching for his son Lu-Ten after his death, went on a journey into the spirit world. In fact, he is able to see Aang journeying through the spirit world in person, the only person to be able to notice him when he flies by. In the episode about the solstice.
Yeah, and Iroh has had just Iroh has been so in tune with spirituality throughout the show. He's one of the first people who suggests learning other disciplines instead of just the one that you were born with. So, learning disciplines from the Water Tribe in order to learn how to channel electricity rather than just generate it. We see him be respectful of Earth culture decades after trying to take over their capital city of Ba Sing Se. So he's someone who is just very enlightened, so it's no surprise that he goes full Force Ghost and lives in the spiritual world.
Yeah, on his deathbed, rather than letting himself die, he sends his spirit into the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's implied that eventually he will either become a spirit perhaps himself or move on to what is next after the spirit world. But for now, he keeps up his own tea shop in the afterlife
Mm-hmm.
and is there to be a counsel for anyone who stops by.
Yeah. Otherwise, we have Jinora, who is Aang's granddaughter, airbender, someone who is, out of everyone that we see who can, meditate and focus on the higher aspects of life, she's the one who gets it the most. She's able to astral project. She's able to remote view from her perspective. Uh, so otherwise, we have Zahir, who is kind of her foil, who is an individual who is very enlightened, but just uses that enlightenment for the most diabolical of motivations.
Yeah, so it's portrayed as a high-level airbending technique is the ability to detach so much from the world you can send your spirit into the spirit world or into sort of that in-between place where your spirit is detached, but uses the spirit world as sort of a vehicle to project into other places in the real world. So Jinora and Zahir both use that. Jinora thinks it's just her ability, but it turns out Zahir has mastered it as well and is able to, and uses it as a neutral place to attempt to negotiate with Korra.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that goes well. So, we have Jinora, who's very spiritually attuned, Iroh, but we don't really see, and we have Yue, who becomes a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there just seems to be this general both wariness and respect for the spirit world that sort of persists throughout.
Mm-hmm. And we had, I guess, something we didn't mention. There was no spirit realm. There was no world of spirits. There was a world that was inhabited by man and spirit alike. And it wasn't until
Harmonic convergence.
we had the separation of the world and the wilds. So the spiritual was locked away, sort of separated between these two portals.
Because it turns out proximity to too many humans can drive spirits insane.
Mm-hmm.
So learning to live with each other has been one of the ongoing experiments of now this new portal in Republic City, where spirits can also travel freely in from the real world. And not all spirits are happy places. I mean, if Koh the Face-Stealer decided to come visit Republic City,
Mm-hmm.
what would happen?
Yeah.
We don't know. But it is certainly something that could happen in the future. And I think by continuing with the mystical path as well as showing this technological advancement, we see a lot of things always constantly in flux in the Avatar universe.
And I think in order to be truly brave, a sequel series would really have to look at the commingling of the realms of human and spirit. So, what does a city that is living with spirit trees, spirits of animal hybrids, and your everyday working folk look like?
Yeah, excited to see it. It just started to get touched on in Korra, and I think it would lend a sort of mystical and ongoing, esoteric aspect to a series that is defined by both, technology and by character and by the magic of bending
Mhm.
and by mysticism.
Yeah, and as they venture closer to modern day technology, they really need to have the spiritual elements up in focus in order to make the world different and show just that juxtaposition between theirs and ours.
Well, that is our take on the spirit world and the terrifying spirits that inhabit it. Let us know if we missed any spirits you'd like to have talked about. And thank you for listening to our episode.
I've been Connor,
This is Alex.
and we've been talking Star Wars, doing our mini series on Avatar: The Last Airbender.